Hi everyone and welcome to another recipe video. In this one I'm going to share with you a beautiful waffle recipe. This is a Belgian waffle called Liege, and what sets this apart is the fact that the dough is a yeast dough and it's got pearl sugar. This is pearl sugar right here, what I'm showing you. And they're basically sugar crystals. And what this does is when you cook the waffle in the waffle iron, you will get a beautiful caramelized crispy exterior, and it's to die for. If you've ever had one, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't tried one, then go ahead and make this recipe. It's so easy and honestly delicious. So I'm gonna start with the ingredients. So first of all, I have some fresh yeast here, and I'm gonna activate it basically by heating up the milk to sort of a lukewarm temperature. And to that, I will crumble up that fresh yeast and let it sit. You do this is a very normal thing with yeast. You let it just sit in some warm liquid so that it's very dissolved and active. And it's also a great way to tell if the yeast is alive or not. You could do this with yeast powder, and just make sure you do the conversion properly. So give it a stir and let it sit for about 10 minutes. And in the meantime, you can start with your dry ingredients. I'm combining flour, sugar, and salt in a mixing bowl. And when it comes to yeast doughs, I do like using my mixer, but you could do this by hand as well. So I have all of these 3 dry ingredients together. I'm using my hook attachment because this is a dough. When you have a dough, then that's the attachment that you want to use. Once I give it a stir and my yeast liquid is sort of combined and well incorporated, then I'm gonna combine the two and let that come together. Now, the great thing about using a mixer is that you can prepare the other stuff while the mixer is doing all the work, right? So for this recipe, you're gonna need 1 large egg, and this is at room temperature because I'm working with yeast. So I like to beat the egg in a bowl and add some flavoring. In this case, I'm just going for a classic vanilla flavor. And I'm gonna just pour it straight in there and let the mixer make sure that it's fully incorporated. You can see that a ball is starting to form. I would say that I'm doing a low to medium speed with the mixer. And once you see a ball starting to form, now it's time to add the butter. I like to use something warmer than room temperature because it's so much easier to incorporate because of the softness of the butter. I overdid mine in the microwave, so it's kind of half melted, half there. And it's gonna be a bit messy, but it will also still work. So I'm adding it very slowly to the dough. And once I add the full thing, I'm just gonna let the mixer do its thing, and don't worry, it will come together. And you will know it's ready the second it starts pulling from the sides of the bowl. So this will take a few minutes, and while that is going, I'm basically just cleaning up my mess, and that is another bonus point for having a mixer. Now, once it's coming together like this, I'm just gonna transfer it to a bowl and let it sit for 2 hours at room temperature. I'm gonna cover the bowl with some cling film, some plastic wrap, and just let it sit somewhere warm. It needs to double in size, and this can take about 1.5 hours to 2 hours, depending on the environment where you live. Now, this has been sitting for about 1.5 hours, and you can see it's gotten way bigger. And now I need to just deflate the bowl so that I can incorporate my sugar pearls. I'm just gonna dump the whole bit right in the center. It doesn't matter. We're gonna use a spatula, something that is hard, like a wooden spoon would be great. Something that can just get in there. You could use the mixer again if you wanted to, but I just wanted to keep the dough in the same bowl, basically. So just try to incorporate them so that you get even distribution of those crystals. And once you're done, that's it. You can now form your individual portions. So what I would recommend is having 90 grams per dough ball for a nice waffle portion. You could always make bigger waffles than the ones I'm showing here. And for that, what I would recommend if you want to mess around with the portion size is to weigh out the entire dough ball and just try to split it evenly. So for example, I got 8 dough balls of 90 grams each from this batch. So you could divide, instead of dividing that by 8, you could divide it by 6 and make bigger waffles. So it's up to you. You can be as flexible as you like. And you can check out the video and see how big the waffles are in the end for me and adjust your recipe accordingly. So I've covered my scale with the same cling film that I used to let the dough rise. Again, just to avoid having to clean even more. So here we have our final portion bowls. I'm just giving them a final shape. I'm trying to make them as round as possible so that I get a nice even circle once I put them onto the waffle iron. A great way to multitask would be to start preheating that waffle iron already before you start shaping these dough balls. And then you'll be ready to go. Now, I would suggest that you check your waffle iron guidelines before attempting to follow exactly what I'm doing in this video, because for this part, it very much depends on your appliance and how it's regulating the temperature. What I find is that the first waffle is kind of taking longer because I don't wait long enough for the whole thing to preheat. So all I'm saying here is don't be afraid to experiment with the first dough ball just to check that you have the right temperature and the timing down correctly. What I find works for my waffle iron is to have the setting at max, and the total cooking time is about 3 minutes for me. It should be nice and golden brown like this, but what you want to make sure is that it's cooked properly. So use that first waffle to experiment and check how it's cooked inside, and then adjust for the rest of your waffles. Now, since this recipe is so easy and we're talking about multitasking a lot, you could have a pot of tea making in the background while the waffle is cooking in the waffle iron. Tea, coffee, whatever. The key thing is that you want to eat these guys as fresh as possible. The fresher they are, the crispier the exterior will be, and the more kind of caramelized exterior it will have. So definitely eat them within the same day because it is yeast after all. And just let me show you what they look like. So essentially what you have here is kind of a bun, like a cinnamon roll, for example. It's got that spongy texture. It's very soft, yet very crispy thanks to that pearl sugar. which melts beautifully in the waffle iron and gives it its characteristic texture. I love how simple this recipe is and so delicious. I hope you also like it and that you try it. And if you do, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like my video, subscribe and share. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time with another great recipe.